Hey everybody, it's Chris. I just wanted to give you guys a quick little review on Dr. Sleep by Stephen King. This is the sequel to The Shining, which was released in 1977, so there's quite a few years in between that and this. And I want to say it's okay to watch this review if you have not read The Shining, because I'm going to try not to spoil too much of anything that happens in The Shining, although I would definitely recommend reading The Shining before reading this book. Even if you've seen the Kubrick movie, I'm kind of with Stephen King on the opinion that that is not necessarily a great adaptation of The Shining. Kubrick is a really great filmmaker and that film is really great, but it's not the same. It's a completely different type of story. Honestly, I would say that film is not scary, while The Shining, the book, is scary, and The Shining, the book, is much better, so I would definitely tell you to read that before you try to read this, because it'll help your understanding of this a lot better. Basically, this book surrounds Danny Torrance, who was just a little boy in The Shining. He is the one that the title is basically for, because he has something called The Shining, which is kind of an ambiguous term. It can mean a few different things for a few different people. Basically, it means that a person has the ability to read other people's thoughts sometimes, to influence people's thoughts sometimes, to understand what people are feeling, to communicate with people in a way that is not verbal, and sometimes it even allows like psychic or telekinetic abilities in some cases where it's strong. So that's where the term The Shining comes from, if you did not know. And Danny has The Shining, and in this book it kind of picks up right where The Shining left off. Right after the end of The Shining, it kind of goes over some things while Danny is still a little boy, and then it kind of skips ahead to his later adult life. And it's really great to see Stephen King develop a character in that way several years later, take a character that he used to write and make him more grown up so we can see what he's like in his adult. And that's one of the main reasons this book is appealing to so many people, is to see what happened to Danny after he left the Overlook Hotel and what kind of adult he becomes. And when he's an adult, he still has The Shining. It's not as powerful as it was when he was younger, but it's definitely still there, and he uses it in a lot of different ways. Danny, who goes by Dan now in this book, he is kind of following in his father's footsteps a little bit by becoming an alcoholic, but unlike his father, Jack Torrance, Dan goes into Alcoholics Anonymous and tries to kind of get help for being an alcoholic. And it's really great to see him overcome that in a way that his father could not, and then to use The Shining to help people. The term Dr. Sleep comes from the place where Dan works. He works at a hospice where basically sick or old people go before they die. That might be like the not so nice way to put it, I guess. But yes, everybody in there is basically just sitting waiting to die. And Dan uses his Shining to help the people that are dying pass on more peacefully, and that's why he's called Dr. Sleep. He's not an actual doctor. He just kind of goes in and has this really good ability of helping people when they pass on. And that's really interesting to read about. And the book follows his story a lot, but there's also a lot of other things going on in this book. Dan gets these like psychic conversations and little psychic feelings from this girl named Abra, who like towards the beginning of the book has just been born, and as soon as Abra is born, she kind of reaches out to Dan and to Tony, who is like Dan's imaginary friend, or a friend that's in his head. You know, the kid in the Kubrick movie is like talking with his finger. That's Tony. That doesn't actually happen in the book, but that's the best way I can describe Tony. Tony is this thing in Dan's head who kind of represents Dan's childhood. And while Dan is grown up, Tony is still a kid. So Abra reaches out to Tony, who is inside of Dan still, and kind of has conversations with Tony and with Dan, even though she's really, really young. And the book skips ahead even more to when Dan and Abra finally meet, and Dan has to help Abra kind of deal with her Shining, because she has a really, really powerful Shining. She is one of the most powerful Shining people there is. She has all of these really amazing abilities that her Shining allows her to do. Unfortunately, in this book, there is a group of villains that calls themselves the True Knot, and they are really interesting, like evil in this story. All of the characters inside of the True Knot I think are really interesting. I really like them a lot. I mean, they're horrible, despicable people, but they're really nice characters, like really well written characters. I think they're all very different from each other, and they all have very distinct personalities for the most part. And just having them as an antagonist kind of does a lot for the story, in my opinion. They go around basically looking for kids who have powerful shining, which they call steam. And they go to these kids and they kind of like torture them and kill them. The more pain the kid goes through, the more steam comes out of them, and it helps the True Knot to live longer and to look younger and to be healthier. They're basically a sort of vampire type of thing that goes around taking steam from kids that have the shining. And the leader of the True Knot kind of picks up Abra because she's such a powerful shining person, because she, the leader of the True Knot, feels like she's never experienced a person with that much steam before, and they could really use the steam to help themselves. Another way that they get steam is by going to tragic events that occur in history. They kind of have a sense for when these tragic events are going to occur. Like one example is 9/11, and that's like kind of soon after Abra's born, and Abra senses 9/11 and starts like crying hysterically because she feels it too, and the True Knot feel it, and they go to New York and kind of watch as 9/11 happens, and they get more powerful from it because so many people are being tortured and killed and dying painfully. And I thought that was kind of brave of Stephen King to mention a lot of the tragic events that kind of happened in the United States as fuel for the True Knot. I mean, he mentioned some school shootings. I think I remember him mentioning the Boston Marathon bombing. And yeah, anyway, this book I thought was really good. It was definitely an interesting sequel. It was definitely very much a new Stephen King book. I mean, obviously it's new, it just came out this past year, but I mean, there's kind of a distinctive tone that separates Stephen King's older work and Stephen King's newer work, and I'm actually going to be talking about that in my Stephen King video, which I'll explain a little bit about at the end of this video. But there's definitely a distinct tone to his older work and his newer work, and I know Stephen King was really trying to return to his old ways of telling a horror story when he was younger, and I don't think it really comes across as well as he might have liked in this book. I didn't really find myself being that scared during this like I was when I read The Shining. It's definitely not as horror-y, it's definitely not as scary, but it is a really great book. It has some kind of slow parts, and the ending is a little bit predictable, but at the same time I still really like this book a lot. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really great sequel. I thought it was a really great idea for a sequel for The Shining. And I'm not someone who feels like Stephen King has to write really great scary horror like he used to. I like his new style a lot, and I liked the way he used his new style in this book. He makes a lot of references to popular culture nowadays, and I think some people had some problems with that. I've read some reviews where people have problems with the constant popular culture references he makes, and I actually like it. I kind of like that he's grounding this book in the present, like kind of reminding you that this is not an old Stephen King book. This is not something that happened in the 70s. This is something that's happening now in the present, in our world today, at least as far as the book is concerned. And I like that. I've always liked his references to popular culture and references to his other works. He makes some references to his son Joe Hill's work, like Nosferatu specifically, and I thought that was really fun. And yeah, I gave the book a 4 out of 5 stars. Well, 4.5 out of 5, because I really liked it. It wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little bit scarier, but like I said, I'm okay with it being what it is. The 4.5 is mostly just because it was kind of slow at some parts and the ending was kind of predictable, but overall I really liked it. I thought it was a really great add-on to The Shining. Dan Torrance in his adult life is really believable. He's really great, and I really like Abra as a character. She was really unique, had a really great voice, had a really great perspective, and I liked that Stephen King kind of did some more characterization of what The Shining is and what The Shining can do through Abra, and I like that a lot, and I think Abra was a really great addition to this book, and so were the True Knot. The True Knot was a really interesting villain, like I said. And anyway, like I said, I definitely recommend you read that if you have read The Shining. Don't read that book if you have not read The Shining, and don't read it if you've only seen the movie. Read the book first, and then read this book. I mean, if you're going to read The Shining, you should definitely read Dr. Sleep as well, and yeah. Anyway, I've mentioned a couple times in a couple other videos, and people seem to be really interested in it, that I'm going to be making a video all about Stephen King books. I've read 34 out of like more than 50 books that he's written, so I haven't read a lot of his books, and I in no way consider myself an expert. I like his books a lot, I like his writing a lot, and I've read a lot of his books, and I feel like I can give some pretty accurate recommendations to people who may not have read a lot of Stephen King or may not have read any Stephen King at all, based on what genres I think the books are, what they're about, and I just want to give some recommendations and advice for what books I think people should read when they pick up a Stephen King book. I've already started writing a whole bunch of notes on that. I'm going to try to get that video out by the end of this week. These are like some of the notes that I've been writing about that video, about all of the books that I've read. I'm just trying to make sure I can go into that video knowing what I want to say before I do it, so I'm not rambling way too much for like an hour in front of the camera. And I just want to make sure I can give the most accurate advice and recommendations that I can. Yeah, I really hope you'll enjoy this video. I really hope you decide to pick up The Shining, and if you have picked up that, I really hope you decide to pick up Dr. Sleep because it's a great sequel. I hope you'll subscribe to see more in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.